The Iran conflict, Trump's 4 to 5 weeks claim. The most striking statement of the day came from President Trump, who declared that a limited military operation against Iran would be wrapped up in just 4 to 5 weeks. Looking at what's actually unfolding on the ground in the Middle East, the constant explosions, the ongoing strikes, the widening confrontation, that timeline seems very hard to believe. Realistically, this conflict could stretch on for months, years, or even longer. But here's the thing. Trump wasn't necessarily being dishonest. To understand why, you need to look at what the United States actually set out to achieve. The first objective was regime change, eliminating Iran's leadership. And based on yesterday's reports, that goal may already be partially achieved. Iran's supreme leader was reportedly killed when coalition forces struck his residence, leaving nothing standing at the site of the attack. The second objective is the destruction of Iran's nuclear infrastructure and ballistic missile capabilities. Over the past 24 hours, numerous videos have emerged showing U.S. and Israeli forces hitting military and nuclear sites deep inside Iranian territory. This goal appears to be within reach. The third objective, and arguably the most strategically significant, is drawing as many regional states as possible into the conflict. This is where things get very interesting. The Persian Gulf, Iran strikes its neighbors. Iran hasn't managed to inflict serious damage on Israel or directly hit American soil, but it has turned its firepower on the Gulf states, with devastating effect. The UAE has been hit by multiple Iranian strikes, with footage of large explosions circulating widely. Qatar has suffered even more significantly. Qatari authorities announced today that Qatar Energy has halted LNG production, following attacks on the Ras Laffan industrial facilities. Qatar's foreign minister stated on CNN that Iran must pay a price for its attacks. Qatar's defense minister confirmed that a power plant and the country's primary LNG production site were both targeted. Bahrain and Kuwait have seen similar waves of destruction, with videos and images of fires and explosions emerging throughout the day. In Kuwait, 3 U.S. aircraft were reportedly damaged in a friendly fire incident, something we'll revisit. Beyond the strikes on land, Iran is now attacking oil tankers in the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman, effectively blockading the region's energy exports. Videos published today show tankers on fire, with crews evacuating. The consequences for global energy markets are already severe. European gas prices surged 50% today following the halt in Qatari LNG production. Goldman Sachs has warned that European natural gas prices could more than double if the Strait of Hormuz remains blocked for months. In response, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom issued a joint statement today, indicating they may join the coalition and begin striking Iranian missile and drone infrastructure directly. Daruus. The U.S. endgame: walk away and sell weapons. Here is what I believe is actually happening strategically. Within the next 5 weeks, the U.S. will have accomplished its core objectives: regime change and the destruction of Iran's nuclear and missile programs. At that point, Washington is likely to step back from direct involvement and leave the regional states, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Oman, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, to manage the ongoing conflict with Iran largely on their own. And of course, the United States will then sell enormous quantities of weapons to all of these countries to sustain their fight. This approach makes cold financial and strategic sense. America has lost assets and bases across the region, but the long-term profit from arming every Gulf state for a prolonged confrontation with Iran far exceeds those losses. Russia and China are also positioning themselves. China's foreign ministry declared today that Beijing supports Iran's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity. Russia's stance is more complicated, officially supportive of Iran, yet Russian oil and gas company shares are rising amid the conflict, since Europe desperately needs an alternative to Gulf energy. There's even speculation that European sanctions on Russia could be eased. as Moscow may become the only realistic supplier of gas to Europe if Gulf exports remain disrupted. That said, France and Belgium today seized a vessel they identified as belonging to Russia's shadow fleet off their northern coast, suggesting European governments are not yet ready to normalize relations with Moscow. On that note, French President Macron made a landmark announcement today. France is expanding its nuclear arsenal for the first time and will no longer publicly disclose figures about the size of its stockpile, a significant statement at any time, but especially now, amid the Middle East conflict and ongoing discussions about potentially supplying Ukraine with nuclear capabilities. Tektowartiki, Ukraine. Air defenses under pressure. Turning to Ukraine, President Zelensky has warned that Russia is planning a massive combined missile and drone strike within the next 48 hours, targeting energy infrastructure. This warning appears credible for a very specific reason. UK Prime Minister Starmer recently stated that Ukraine has been asked to send air defense specialists to help Gulf partners shoot down Iranian drones. The most plausible interpretation is that these aren't active Ukrainian military personnel, but specialists from private military companies currently operating on Ukrainian territory. If they are redeployed to the Middle East, which looks increasingly likely, Ukraine's air defense capability will weaken noticeably in the short term. Russia will almost certainly test this weakened defense. Expect a significant intensification of missile and drone strikes against Ukrainian energy infrastructure in the days ahead, as Moscow probes whether it can now achieve levels of damage previously beyond its reach. On the offensive front, Ukrainian forces launched a large drone attack overnight targeting southern Russia. The Russians claim to have intercepted 172 drones. The results on the Ukrainian side are still being assessed. Arturs frontline updates. Sloviansk direction. This remains the most critical sector. Russian forces have made significant gains in both the eastern and northeastern approaches to Sloviansk. The battle for Fedorivka, the last settlement in the second defensive layer southeast of Sloviansk, appears nearly concluded. Russian control has been confirmed by neutral mappers and pro-Ukrainian sources alike. Meanwhile, the village of Kalinivka has now become the focus, the most heavily fortified position in the entire eastern Sloviansk direction, packed with strongholds and trenches. Breaking through this layer could take 1 to 2 months, after which Russian forces would push toward Oleksandrivka and Mykolaiivka. Lyman direction. The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed today that Russian forces have established full control over the settlement of Druzhba. Footage from the northern Lyman area shows Ukrainian drones striking Russian positions, but Ukrainian defenses to the north and northwest of Lyman appear to have collapsed. In the coming days, Russia will likely push to sever the remaining Ukrainian logistics lines supplying forces inside Lyman itself. The city's days appear to be numbered. Kharkiv region. The Russian Defense Ministry confirmed the capture of Krula in the northeastern part of the Kharkiv region. Russian advances in this area are continuing. Zaporizhzhia direction. Russian forces continue pressing toward Shakhtar from both west and east. Complete control over Fryazivka has now been confirmed by multiple sources, with fighting shifting to the next defensive line, the villages of Vasilivka, Vilna, and Holska. If this line breaks, Orekhiv becomes the next town under threat. That covers the key developments for March 2, 2026. We condemn all violence and hope for peaceful resolution across every front. Thank you for watching.